Hey, everybody. Hope you're having a great day today. Jason, it's time to talk Area 51. It's time to talk spy planes, hidden technology, crazy U.S. tech, reverse engineered craft, and our friend Bob Lazar. And we're talking to a man who's pretty much an expert in all of those categories, including a close personal friend of Bob for 35 years. He can tell you things about Bob that if you're not a Bob believer, you just might change your mind. Again, we're non-biased. We believe in Bob Lazar.
100%.
We love the story, but Jim Goodall is an aviation historian, knows everything about every stealth fighter ever made, planes that never have seen the light of day. He could
submarines even, right?
Exactly. So we're gonna go in a lot of areas. We're gonna talk about some cool tech. He has some pictures he sent to us of him in like Blackbird stealth fighters and in areas that the average person would never have access to. And he's one of the foremost experts on Area 51 and a lot of covert things that have happened over the years. So we're going to, I guess, pick his brain on a bunch of stuff. And he's a super nice guy, easy to talk to. And we're the kids and we're chatting with Grandpa today. So I'm excited.
That's awesome. I'm looking forward to it.
So we'll roll our credits and we'll be right back with Mr. Jim Goodall right here on UAP Studies Podcast. Welcome back to another episode of UAP Studies Podcast. My name is Louis Borges. Joining me as always, my best buddy, Mr. Jason Gilmet.
On deck, my man. I'm ready for this interview. This is going to be fun. I'm really happy that Jim is here joining us today. So this is going to be a great conversation. I got so many questions.
I can't think of anybody better to talk to involving, spy tech, aviation, cool planes, even connections within our community, some deep friendships he's had for years with some very popular names. We're going to get to all that. Jim is an Air Force veteran. I would say one of the foremost experts on Area 51. He's also an aviation journalist and historian. And he's here to chat with us about all things Area 51, Bob Lazar related. I see the United Nuclear T-shirt. That is Bob Lazar's company. Welcome to the show, Jim. Great to have you, brother.
I'm absolutely delighted to be here. And the shirt, Bob Lazar made it for me when I was visiting him here a couple of weeks ago.
Amazing.
And I spent a day and a half with him. And I just, he is the same person I met 35 years ago. He is easygoing. He is about as considerate as they come. He's soft-spoken. His wife, Joy, is one of the sweetest women in the whole wide world. And she's 68 or 69. She looks like she's 35. She's a skin specialist. I mean, she does, facials for a living. And he's as happy as he's ever been. He has 10 acres. He has 3 horses, 3 dogs. And I think it's a 30 by 40 or 30 by 50 lab where he goes in. There's about 10 different stations he has in there, depending on what he's doing. And when I said, "Hey, can I get a United Nuclear shirt?" He said, "Well, just think, I'll go make one." He went into his lab, came back with this shirt. So this was given to me by Bob. I should have had him sign it, but
that sounds like Bob. Yeah, that sounds like Bob. Yeah, hang on, I'll go make you something, right?
Yeah,
he did that with a rocket car once, either for George Knapp or Jeremy Corbell. He was messing around, and or they needed a air filter, a dehumidifier, or some random thing, and he made it with scrap parts out of his shop.
Yeah. He's a real life MacGyver.
Absolutely. Yeah. Brilliant guy. And we'll chat more about Bob in this episode as well. But I want to get people to become familiar with you, sort of give us a little breakdown of your history, what you've done, and what got you into this particular subject of UFOs and high strangeness and all the rest.
Just to start things, I'm 78. I've been around for a long time. Most of the research I did was pre-internet, so you had to actually go out and track the person down and interview them in person. There was very little. But my love of aviation started when I was about 5. We were living in San Jose in the Bay Area. And across the Guadalupe Creek was San Jose Municipal Airport, not the international airport it is today, but it was just a little airport. And I had already gone to bed. We were living in a duplex, and my dad came in about 10 minutes after I had gone to bed was still light outside. He says, "Hey, I don't know what's coming, but you got to see it." So we went outside, and all you could hear is and the ground is vibrating. And over the coast mountains came not one, not two, but 24 Convair B-36s.
Wow.
And I was hooked.
Wow.
I've always loved machines. And fast forward a couple of years, I'm now about 10 years old. My best friend's dad is base commander at Moffett Field Naval Air Station there in Mountain View. And I used to go over all the time. We were referred to as Captain Smith's son and that friend of his by the Marine Guards and Shore Patrol. So I was over there every weekend, during school time, and I was over there a lot during the summer. And Danny said, "There's something really cool in Hangar 1." And we were around so much. We didn't go any place we weren't supposed to, as far as taxiways or runways or whatever. But we were there so much, we were invisible. We were hiding in plain sight. So we rode into Big Hangar 1. That's the big gigantic one that the Google brothers have taken over. And at the far end, on closest to the bay, there was an area that's cordoned off, and it was just a sign that said "Keep out," not use of deadly force authorized, no guards, nobody there. So we rode our bicycles to the end, and Danny said, "Come with me." We go behind these black curtains, and there is the prototype XF-104 Starfighter.
Wow.
Now, I love airplanes, and I saw this thing, and I mean, it was, they advertised it as the rocket with a man in it. And it was just unbelievable. It was still classified secret at the time. And there was no guard, but things back then are different than they are today. Danny said, "Well, get in the cockpit." So we
No way.
boarding ladder over, open the canopy. It's a side open canopy. I get in, close the canopy. He latches it. I'm in there for about 2 minutes. And I said, I'm sitting on an ejection seat. And I didn't realize at the time, because I was only 10, that it's been de-armed because it was in the wind tunnels there at Ames, Ames big wind tunnel complex there at Moffett Field. And Danny and I couldn't undo the latch. Oh, damn. So
you were stuck inside the plane?
I was stuck inside the cockpit.
Oh my.
So he had to run and get some maintenance guys Shore Patrol and the Marines and Lockheed guys. And it's been almost 70 years and my butt still hurts. You talk about getting my butt chewed out. But that's where my first love affair started with Lockheed airplanes, Skunk Works airplanes particularly. So fast forward to March 10th, 1964. I'm an airman second class. That's an E3. They don't call them second classes anymore, or third classes. That would be politically incorrect. And I was there. I was there at TDY, temporary duty, from Lowry Air Force in Denver to support 3 programs for ground-based telemetry. And I was a communications specialist. And the first airplane that I saw in the orders was the YC-141 Starlifter, the XB-70, and a classified program. And I didn't know what that classified program was, because it was classified. So the morning of, it was February 29th, leap year, and it came in on a Saturday morning, 2 YF-12 Blackbirds came over from Area 51. They came straight in. They've been flying out in the desert, but they came straight in, pulled up, to get pushed back into their hangar, and the engines are still running. And the heat from the J-58 set up the deluge system, which dumped about 60,000 gallons of water into the hangar. I mean, it just almost drowned the poor Lockheed reps.
Whoa.
And all the alarms went off. Hey, there's something crashed on the flight line. And we're 8 miles, our barracks are 8 miles from the flight line. And I went out, running out to get my truck, and it was already gone. So, I heard something incredible over the next 10 days. And I had worked a lot of overtime installing the systems at both ends of the information gathering part. And so I had some time off, and it was a Tuesday. It was about 3:15 in the afternoon, and I'm waiting for the Northrop shuttle. They had a Piaggio, I think it's a gull-wing pusher type of thing. It was going between Edwards and their offices in Hawthorne, California, in LA. and there was room. So I was, if I heard a roar, I mean, an incredible roar I've been hearing all week long and not seeing it because I've been inside, and went running down the taxiway. I look over to the XB-70 test pad, which hadn't rolled out yet. And I thought it was the X-15. Fire coming out of the back end, blowing dust halfway across Rogers Dry Lake. But the people were too small. And all of a sudden it said, hey, we're loading. So I'm running back in. I get in the airplane. We go down the taxiway, and we just took off over the lake bed. And we bank over, and I look straight down on a YF-12 Blackbird Interceptor. They only built 3 of those. And I looked down, and I could not believe what I was seeing. It was absolutely the most incredible thing. And to get a relative footprint, they had just shut down the engine, and they were towing a C-130 by it in front of it. So you could see just how big that puppy was. And the following Monday, when I got back to the base, I got handed my work order, and there was a Lockheed hangar. And I walked into the back of the Lockheed hangar, and I'm looking at the ass end of 2 Blackbirds. And I'm 18 years old. It's 1964. And that was the most incredible thing I'd ever seen in my life. And I was stuck. So I never thought I'd be where I'm at today, as far as knowledge on the Blackbird. But when I got out of the service at the end of '66, and I ended up working for the phone company in LA, and then I ended up going to work for Xerox. But in 1968, I sent a letter to Lockheed, to CIA, to Secretary of the Air Force, Secretary of Defense, and some other people, asking for color 8x10s of the Blackbird. And their official policy was not to cooperate. So I started digging. And the more I dug, the more I found out. The more I found out, the deeper I dug. So over the course of the last 60 years, Jesus, from a historical point of view, according to Ben Rich, who was a longtime friend of mine, I'm the most knowledgeable person on the planet on the history and development of the Blackbirds.
Wow.
They were so compartmentalized back then that if you were working on widget A and your buddy's working on widget B, you didn't talk about what you did. Yeah. It was that level of I don't know, patriotism, whatever it is. Today, it doesn't work so much. You're going to find someone who, with their own agenda, they're going to go and do what they want. But that was really the beginning of my passions. And then in 1976, I decided to join the Air Guard. And I went in as a communication specialist, but shortly thereafter, I became the wing historian. But I went in the Guard, so I have a little pink ID card that got me on every base in the United States except for the restricted ones. And I'm a good enough BSer, I can talk my way into any flight line, and I did. And over the course, up through 9/11, when everything changed, I've been on the ramp to photograph at 216 Air Force, Air Guard, and Reserve bases in all 50 states.
Wow.
And you sent us some pictures, actually. I'm going to bring them up here. You can go through what they are.
Okay.
Because they are very cool. So we'll start with the first one. So you go ahead and describe what we're looking at here, Jim.
Oh, that's me at Beale Air Force Base. I'm an
handsome man. Handsome man. Yeah.
That's when I had dark hair. That wasn't real. That wasn't my real dark hair that came out of a bottle. I started turning gray when I was about 15. And they say I got the gray hairs. I earned every single one of them.
Yeah.
So that's at Beale Air Force Base, and that's inside an SR-71.
Okay.
That's my baby. That was my baby for 10 or 15 years. That is the 8th built Blackbird. That's an A-12. This one has flown straight and level at 92,500 feet. It has during flight tests, Jim Eastham was flying it. And they were. This was the envelope expansion airplane, and they were having problems with the inlet. They hadn't been able to go a sustained, Mach 2.8 or 2.9 at that time, and they had been playing with the inlet schedule, and they had duct taped over some stuff. They had pinned the tertiary doors in the afterburner I think it put them in the open or the closed position, and they got up to about 2.7, 2.8, and no matter what they did, the airplane wouldn't accelerate past that. So Jim was up there Jim Eastham was up there trying to figure out what he can do, and he was in real bad air. And he dropped the nose, and all of a sudden he got in good air, and things started popping. He didn't know what it was. He said it was almost like something was breaking on the airplane, but all the instruments said, "Hey, you're okay." Well, the pin, free-floating tertiary doors started breaking, popping loose from their being pinned, and for about 15 seconds, when he hit the good air, all of a sudden everything redlined, and he went from like 2.9 to Mach 3.56 for about 15 seconds. And he realized that, I shouldn't have done that. So he goes his descent profile and head back to the barn. So there's, it's the 3.56 is a momentary, event. The airplane was designed from the beginning to fly at Mach 3.24. That's the sweet spot for the inlets. And it's more efficient at Mach 3.2 than it is subsonic. And it's just, I've been over every square inch of that airplane. I've had every panel open. And of course, we had to cut the wings off and put it inside a C5 to get it to Minnesota. But we put it back together. And after 15 years, the CI said, well, we want that airplane. So the SOBs took it from me, and it was the rat bastard at the Air Force Museum approved it. And they did it over the Thanksgiving, Christmas holidays when no one's around. And we had 60 days to respond. It made the front page of the Wall Street Journal fighting the Air Force Museum and the CIA. But that's me, a young me. God, that was, 35 years ago.
It's amazing, the crystal clear images too. Like, they look HD, so that's amazing.
Yeah, I know. I've always shot with good cameras, so I've had Nikons most of my life.
Yeah. Okay, we'll go to the next pick here. What are we looking at? I think that's the plane with the wings cut off you just mentioned, right?
And the guy sitting in front of it, it's Jim Eastham. He was the first guy to fly the airplane, third guy. And he sat in the cockpit of our airplane. It's the first time I've been in the cockpit of an A-12 in 25 years. And when we loaded it up, the loadmaster said, I don't think it's going to fit. We had 1.5 inches of clearance when we rolled that puppy back into the C5.
That's nothing. Yeah, it's hardly anything.
But the way I got the airplane in the C5 in August of '89, a longtime friend of mine, Ben R. Rich, the president of Lockheed Skunk Works, we had it wasn't a pen pal. We would call each other. He'd primarily call me. This went on about once a quarter for over 20 years. And Ben calls me at home and he said, Jim, says, I have it from the horses. Yeah, and he stopped for a second. He was to say but he stopped the horse's mouth that the blackbirds aren't going to make it through Congress. And if anybody could scrounge one, it's you. So I said, okay, I'll accept the challenge. So I went over to the base and I got on Autovon or DSN, which is a government phone system. And I called the adjutant general of the state of New York. And secretary answered, and I said, General Weaver's office. I said, yes, ma'am, this is Sergeant Goodall with the 133rd. Is General Weaver available? Just a minute, Sergeant, I'll put you through. So General Weaver gets on and said, Sarge, how can I help you? And I said, sir, I have a question. He said, shoot. He said, how would the New York Air Guard, excuse me, like to move the world's fastest airplane in a couple of your C5s? And he dead silence for a few seconds. He said, you mean the Blackbird? I said, yes, sir. He said, when you're ready, you call, we'll haul. So we had that taken care of. So I went to my boss, Major General Al Schwab, and he said, General Schwab, I want to get a Blackbird for our museum. He starts laughing at me. He said, sir, do me a favor. Rather than say no, give me the opportunity to fail. He said, all right, smarty, how are you going to get it here? And I said, I already got that covered. He said, what do you mean? I said, I talked to the AG at New York, and he said I could have a couple of his C5s to move it. So that part was taken care of. Arnie Gunderson from Pratt & Whitney was trying to get a Blackbird for West Palm Beach, and he'd gone to Air Force, not Air Guard, but Air Force, and asked if they could lease a C5, and the Air Force said yes. It's about $970,000 a day plus gas. And I scrounged 2 for 8 days each for free. So I have to be the best scrounger in the United States military, because not only did I get a Blackbird and an A-12 Blackbird at that, but two C5s to move it. But that isn't the best part. We loaded the thing up on the 27th of October, 1991. They didn't have gas at Palmdale, so we flew to Travis, spent the night. Next morning, we took off, and we're heading out. We're about 35, 40 minutes out, and the Chief Master Sergeant Loadmaster is going down to check the load. I said, can I go down with you? And he said, normally the answer would be no, but since this is your project, sure. So I went downstairs, looked at the airplane. I'm just sitting there, just grin. You couldn't slap the grin off my face. So I went out, I climbed up in the landing gear. I walked along the chines. I had a wheel chock stuck in the canopy, so it didn't close all the way. The counterbalance was out of nitrogen. So I opened up the canopy. I had a 5-gallon bucket on the ejection seat. It was all the way down, and a cushion. And I got in the cockpit, closed the canopy, and I'm in there for about 45 minutes. And I'm just sitting there with a grin on my face that you couldn't slap off me. And after about 45 minutes, I heard a rap on the bottom of the airplane. I opened up the canopy, say, yeah, we got to go back up. So went back up. Now we're about 40 minutes out of Minneapolis. We're starting our gradual descent. And the chief comes back and he said, the boss said you could be in the cockpit when we land. Well, I'm already up front on the C5. And I said, no, it says downstairs. So once we landed, I called Ben Rich the next day, and I said, Ben, I think I hold a record that no one will ever be able to match. And he said, what's that? I said, I'm the only person on the planet to have been in the cockpit of a Blackbird at 33,000 feet at Mach 0.72 inside another airplane and landed it as well. And Ben said he was laughing so hard he almost wet his pants. He threatened to issue me a Mach 3 minus card, but he never did. But that's something that no one will ever be able to do, because now with all the fraud, waste, and abuse crap that's going on in our military, you just couldn't pull that off. So it was a once in a lifetime event. And it was just one of the more exciting things I've ever done. Yeah. You want to go to the next one?
Yep. I think that's a similar pick.
Yeah.
Same plane being loaded up.
She's going in. Okay, I'm at Whiteman Air Force Base. I'm about 50 pounds lighter now than I was there. And I also needed a haircut. I realized that. But if you notice the data block up in the upper left-hand corner, yeah, I'm going into the Spirit of Kitty Hawk. It's a B2. And I'm the only one in my neighborhood to have flown the B2 simulator, and I did that for over 2 hours. I've been there half a dozen times. Awesome. And I want to go. I actually want to go up and see if I can go for a ride in the real airplane in the jump seat. That would be a kick. So that's one of my goals in life. I don't know if I'll be able to pull it off, but I'm well thought of in the B2 community. And with a few exceptions, I'm well thought of in the Blackbird community too. There's a couple pilots, for whatever reason, I sort of grate their ass because I wasn't part of the program, but I'm one of the most knowledgeable persons on the program.
Yeah.
So you can go to the next one. Okay, I love this shot. This just shows you just how wide that airplane is. We're just beginning to take the skin panels off. There's about top and bottom on both sides. There's about 2,400 screws, and on the bottom they're riveted. So we had to drill those out. Those are titanium rivets.
Now, Jim, just so for clarity of the picture, so for the listeners that are not seeing the picture, it's I believe this is the Blackbird, but the
Right.
back end of it. Now, is it being assembled, or is it being disassembled or
No,
reassembled?
we're getting ready. This view is at Site 10, which is now the home of the Lockheed Skunk Works at Air Force Plant 42 in Palmdale, California. And it's a sort of a Western view. And I'm standing up on a work stand, to take this picture. And this just shows you just how it's a 58-foot wingspan. And we're looking at 103 feet of fuselage, in front, and it's all fuel.
Yeah.
But we had to take those off. We marked the where we had to cut, and I knew I had gone into a C5 and measured every which way I could to make sure this thing would fit, and it did.
You said you had an inch and a half only?
Inch and a half clearance. That was total clearance on the floor.
Wow.
Now, against the floor wheels. But I had taken in consideration that if it was too tight, we could put a come along between the landing gear and torque them in to give us another inch or two.
Yeah.
So that wasn't a concern.
So you're good at thinking outside the box, Jim.
I always have. Okay,
Yeah.
now this is a very famous shot. There's only two of us still alive. The guy in the black jacket with the sunglasses, that's Stuart Brown. Stu Brown did the article in Popular Science in March of '94 on Area 51. 6 million people read that issue. Of course, the handsome guy with the red hat and the camo jacket, that's me. Behind me is Tom Luttrell. He was the commandant of the Tulare Police Department. Lost him to cancer years ago. Glenn Campbell, who ran and started up the Area 51 Research Center in Rachel, he's gone. The handsome guy in the blue, I guess it's a breaker, whatever, and a black hat, that's Bob Gilliland, the first guy to fly the SR-71. He's gone. And then my very, very dear friend at the end, John Andrews, he was the development manager for testers. He came out with the big F-117 kit. He came out with the F-19, the quarter-inch SR-71 and YF-12. And he was like my brother. We talked every day. And I referred to him as Spy 1, and he referred to me as Spy 2. And we get on the phone and we say, testing, testing, testing. This is Spy 1 talking to Spy 2. We're going to talk about, and we'd list off every classified program name that we can find and think of. And then we just start talking. And I talked to the guys at the Pentagon when I was there during Desert Storm, and they said, hey, I said, were they listening to us? And they said, don't give them more credit than they're worth. They're just most of the guys that are in security service and whatever are doing a good job, but they're not going to listen to everything, and you're not that important. I said, okay, fine.
Honest answer.
Yeah. So,
and what was in the backdrop there? What valley or landscape are we looking at?
That's Tippecanoe Valley. This is December of '91. Stuart and I spent the night on top of the mountain, and you can see how warm it was with the snow down below.
It's cozy.
Yeah, it was 21 degrees that night with about a 25-mile-an-hour constant wind. It was cold.
Oh, yeah.
But I lived in Minnesota at the time, so I was used to it. Stuart, not so much. This is my airplane after we brought it back, put it back together, painted it in authentic Black Shield markings. Now I took the liberty of taking this shot, cutting off the landing gear and cutting off the ground and putting it into the air because it's the only. I don't have any shots of a CIA A-12 in the air, so I put one in, and I've used it. I use it in my business card, and I use it on other things as well. So. But now this airplane now sits on a pedestal at the headquarters of CIA. And it was really funny. They used one of my photos in a book on Archangel, a booklet on the history of the A-12s. And you open up the book, the first picture you see is mine. First of all, they didn't ask my permission and they didn't give me photo credit. And that really, really pushed my jaws. Cool. Yeah. So my good friend, Jim Stevenson, who's also an author, he lives in DC. He did the $5 billion misunderstanding on the Navy A-12. He's a specialist on copyright and copyright protection. He said Jim said, if our government uses a copyrighted photo in a publication without the permission of the copyright holder, you can charge them and get up to $37,500 for that. So I sent the CIA a bill for $37,500, and I get this nasty gram back from them saying, "Oh, we could have purchased that photo from a stock photo company or got it from Lockheed," because I shot it from the top of our alert hangar, looking straight down on it. I said, if you could have, you would have. It said, how do we know it's your photo? So I sent them 10 examples that has been in publications with my name, with a little C with around with a small circle, a C inside of it. Yeah, that funny little symbol. So I get a call. I sent this back off to him. I get a call from the chief legal counsel for the director of Central Intelligence. You don't get much higher up the food chain than that. Yep. And I said, Mr. Goodall, we understand that, yes, this is your photo, and we do apologize. The gentleman who put the booklet together has a new understanding on the improper use of copyrighted material. And trust me, he won't do it again. But I can't accept $37,500. I'm thinking to myself, I'd go for $500.
Yeah.
I said, make me an offer I can't refuse. He said, $5,000. I said, with one addition. I mean, I about fell off my chair when he said $5,000. I said, I want to have permission to come onto the campus of the CIA and photograph my airplane and do a complete 360-degree walk around with my camera without restrictions. And he said, well, that has to be approved by the director of Central Intelligence. I said, I'll wait for the call. And I get a call from Mr. Levine a couple of weeks later, and he said, it's been approved. I said, okay, I'll figure out when I'm going to be out there. And I arrived at the back gate of CIA on the 22nd of April, 2009. And as I drive up, I'm in a buddy of mine's car. It's not a rent-a-car. It's a buddy of mine's car. I pull up. As I'm rolling down the window, I don't even have my ID out. The guard said, Mr. Goodall, welcome to CIA. So they knew I was there. And he said, he just handed me a blue card, said distinguished visitor. And he said, just go to the front door, just follow the road. It will say DV only, park there, you're fine. So I didn't even show my ID. I just drove up. He knew who I was. And then as I go into the atrium, and it's huge, the guard at the far end said, "Oh, Mr. Goodall, welcome to CIA. Michelle will be right with you." And Michelle is the PAO for CIA at the time. And she comes out, and she is a drop-dead, gorgeous blonde. She's in a red suit.
Not fair. Not fair.
No, she says, I've been here for 21 years. You're the first civilian to be allowed to come onto our facility and photograph.
You're a good talker, Jim.
That's right.
Would have been a great car salesman.
Yeah. So
these are your works. This is your passion.
I have 29 books in print. The one Nautilus Columbia class is at Osprey right now, is 352 pages, and I cover all the nuclear-powered submarines built for the United States Navy, either built or under construction. And that's, as the count is 227 of them. And every submarine has a page, and every one of the name boats have more than one page. They have up to 10. And I cover, let's say I start with the Nautilus and I go all the way through to the Columbia, and it'll be out in November, just in time for Christmas. The one above it is my pride and joy. That's 75 years of Lockheed Skunk Works. 5 of the former heads of the Skunk Works have written me saying this is their favorite book. That and my Blackbird book, which is right next to it, from Shepherd Publishing. So I've just had a ball. And then in my submarines, I have my airplane friends that said, "What the hell are you doing with submarines?" I said, they hit all my buttons. So what do you mean? I said, they're black, they're stealth, and they're deadly. And no one can see them at work because they're underwater. And the general public only sees, the top 3 or 4 feet of the hull and the sail, and that's it. And I've been on 21 nuclear powered submarines. I've been at 400 feet deep in a ballistic missile submarine. I went through the Straits of Juan de Fuca on the Henry M. Jackson as it's going out in patrol. They go out and do angles and dangles and come back in. And as we're going through the Straits of Juan de Fuca, I look behind me, and behind me, there's 24 launch tubes. And in those 24 launch tubes had to be probably in the neighborhood of 75 to 100 hydrogen bombs. And I sort of smiled to myself. I said, Gene Hackman and Denzel Washington don't have a thing on me.
There's no smoking in that submarine, that's for sure.
No. And as a military historian, I see, guys in the cockpit. I'm gonna walk back, go to the bathroom. They're in a B-52. There is no bathroom. Yeah. There's no place you're gonna walk back to, or the grates on the floor. No, they have solid floors, and go underneath the floor or above the ceiling to crawl in. Every square inch or cubic inch of that submarine is, when they're getting ready to go out on patrol, is occupied.
Yeah.
So, but I just had a great time. The Navy likes what I do.
Actually, I got a question though that pops up based on your work and your understanding of airplanes, secret project airplanes, how they fly, capabilities. Now, we study a lot on, people that are trying to figure out the physics of objects in the skies, how they maneuver. Yeah. For instance, the Blackbird you mentioned, it was designed to go at Mach 3.24. When we're talking about a turn radius at that speed for that plane, what are we looking at? Like, how long would it take for it to make a turn?
Well, it's not the length of time, it's the distance traveled. It's about 180-mile radius to turn.
Okay. So when we hear, objects that are able to go at that speed and then make a right angle turn, as far as we know physically, that would break the plane or kill the pilot, right?
No, excluding human involvement in a craft that does that. I had a friend of mine, Bill Fox. He had 36 years at the Skunk Works, and we just bonded here back in the 70s. And I asked him, I said, do we have something that could be going at Mach 10 and then make a 90-degree turn? I said, "Oh yeah, we have that ability. In fact, there's some stuff that there's some anti-ballistic missile stuff that does that could be going 15,000 miles an hour, then make a 90-degree bend or a 45-degree turn or whatever, and you're pulling 200 or 300 Gs. We have the hardware and the equipment can handle that. For a good example, the Copperhead round that they put in, I think in the 105 and 155 millimeter cannons, it's guidable. There's electronics in it. I don't know if they still use the Copperhead, but you blast out of a 155 millimeter howitzer, you're going to exceed a couple Gs, that's for sure.
Right.
And the electronics are designed to work and built to function. on my books down there, the F-117 book, that was the very first one on the F-117, and we sold 67,000 copies. I should have made the New York Times bestseller list, but I wasn't listed. And the SR-71 pilot's manual. Dave Lux, who was the head of in charge of the Blackbird at NASA, Dryden, he's the one who sent me the book, and it irritated Dave Emmons, who was in charge of security on the Blackbird program, so much that he never spoke to Dave again. Even in a meeting, he said, "You can tell Lux he can go kiss my ass," and Lux is sitting right next to me on the side. I mean, they did not. They were pissed. But when my Blackbird book came out, I called up Dave, and I said, "Dave," I says, "I want to send you my Blackbird book." And his thought was, it's another Blackbird book, yippee skippy. So I sent it to him, and I get an email back from him. He said, "I thought this was just going to be another one of those, Me Too books. This is great." I says, "I have it. It's right in the middle of my trophy table in my living room, where it has all his Blackbird memorabilia." So that just tickled the hell out of me. And Jeff Babion, who I interviewed and did a book signing at the Skunk Works in June of 21. He said he has two books. His two favorite books in his man cave that no one's allowed to touch is my Blackbird book and my Skunk Works book. Wow. And that just tickled the hell out of me.
Big compliment for sure.
That's huge.
Oh yeah. So I've this was taken. I had my book upside down. This is Bob Lazar at S5. This was taken on the 23rd of May, 2023.
S5 is what he's codenamed his lab, correct?
Yep. It's the big brother to S4.
Right.
But no UFOs in there. Someone suggested he get put together a hand scanner at the front door.
He could build one. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. He could build one that works. Bob Lazar, what people don't understand, Bob Lazar has a photographic memory. Yeah. I mean, he could read something, and 20 years later, he can tell you every word on page 23 or 410 or whatever.
Yeah.
He is this one of the sweetest people I've ever known, and his wife is equally as sweet. And my next thing I'm going to get from him, but I'm going to get a teacher. I'm going to get an EG&G teacher, because it says reverse engineering of alien technology on the bottom.
How did you guys meet, Jim?
That was the funny part. I met him through John Lear, and John and we go back to 73. So what's that, 50 years? And we lost him last year. We lost John. I'm surprised he made it past 2015. But this is in November of 88. No, November of 88, they announced, the Air Force announced the existence of the B-2 stealth bomber and the F-117. They released it on the 11th and the 22nd of November. First week of January, I'm on my way to Las Vegas, and I call up Lear and I said, "Hey, I'm coming to town. We're going to get in a car. We're going to, we got to find out where this F-117 is flying out of." And he said, "Well, I already know it's flying. It's supposed to be flying out of a place called Tonopah Test Range." So I said, "Well, let's go." So, we jump in the car. We're heading up US 95. We're just north of Scotty's Junction. And Scotty's Junction is sort of famous because that was a legal whorehouse or house of ill repute, however we want to use it, that the federal government took over because they hadn't paid all their taxes and they ran it out of business. That's just how efficient our government is.
Yeah.
So we're about 10 or 15 miles north of Scotty's Junction, and an F-117 flies over about 45-degree angle off the road at about 1,500 feet, and I about crashed the car. So we get into Tonopah, we grab a quick bite, and we head east on US 6. You go out 14 miles. There's a big, huge sign that says Tonopah Test Range. So we head down that road. It's 18 miles to the main gate. I can't get into a restricted area, of which TTR is, but so we drove down the fence line. Now this is before digital cameras. So I normally shot with Kodachrome, but being as I wanted a quick turnaround, if I was able to shoot anything, I was using Kodacolor 100, a very fine grain color film. So we drive about 2 miles west along the fence line, and you can see the whole Tonopah Test Range facility. You can see all the 60 plus hangars, the runway, and everything else. And I look to the north after we were there about 10 minutes, and there's a black fuzzy ball about 15, 20 miles north with a white light underneath it, and then a little bluish white fuzzy ball right next to it. So I figured that's got to be the F-117 and a chase plane. So I'm there with my Nikon. I have my 70 to 200 millimeter Nikon lens. I'm shooting with print film. And I see it's coming, it's getting closer and closer. And I'm up there, and all of a sudden the airplane's starting to fill up the viewfinder. And I'm like a 10-year-old boy seeing a naked woman for the first time. My whole body is just vibrating. I mean, literally, it was like I was on a vibrating machine. I couldn't stop the shaking. So I didn't know if I had any good prints. And then finally, he went by us and landed. I said, John, let's get out of here. Let's get to Las Vegas so I can go to a photomat. And you have to have white hair to know what a photomat is. Back in the day, if you had film you wanted processed and you went to your local Safeway or Rayleigh's or whomever, there was a little kiosk in the middle of the parking lot, and it was yellow and red with all the Kodak colors. And you go by, you wouldn't even have to get out of your car, open your window, they'd hand you an envelope, you put your name on it, put your film in it, hand it back to them, come back the next day, you have your prints. So I knew we weren't going to get back to Las Vegas in time to go to a photomat. And it was bothering me. So we head east on US 6, we get to Warm Springs, which is the northern terminus of the extraterrestrial highway, Nevada Highway 375. We head down that. We stopped at Little Lady Inn. Joe and Pat Travis ran the place, had a bite to eat. And then we headed back off to Vegas. We got to John's house. It's after 9 o'clock, about 9:15. And he said, hey, I got a buddy of mine's coming over. He just moved here from Albuquerque. I think you'll like him. He said, it seems like a nice guy. And about 10 minutes later, we're knocking the door. John goes and gets him, opens it, brings him in. He introduces himself as Bob Lazar. He said he's waiting, for his final interview or clearance, whatever it is, to go to work out in the desert. He doesn't know what he's going to do, but he's been hired. So I tell him my dilemma. I said, I have this print film. I know I have some good shots. Hopefully I have some good shots on the F-117, but I have to wait. I have to wait until 2 days, before I, tomorrow and then the following day before I can get the stuff processed. And he said, well, I have a C-41 processing unit at my house. Let's go over there and process and see what you got. So Lear lives just south of Nellis. The backdrop is Sunrise Ridge, which is that neat mountain behind Nellis Air Force Base. It's also behind John's house. And Bob lived off of West Charleston on the other side of town. So we jump in his car, and we're not more than a block from Lear's house. And Bob looks at me and he says, I feel sorry for that dumb son of a bitch, John Lear. I said, what do you mean? He said, he's from this world famous aviation family. He said, my God, his father brought Learjet to the world. And the dumb son of a bitch believes in UFOs. He says, I'm a nuclear physicist.
Oh, my God.
If I can't prove it mathematically or put my hands on it, it doesn't exist. He said,
funny.
And you couldn't put a gun to my head to convince me that UFOs were real.
That's about to change, isn't it?
Yeah. And so I asked him when I was visiting him, I said, do you remember what you told me the first day I met you, the first evening I met you? Said that I didn't believe in UFOs. He said, yeah. I said, I didn't. There's no way in the world they could exist. My mind's been changed.
Big time. Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah.
What do you say to the critics of Bob Lazar? A lot of people say, he can't validate that he worked there. His education is screwed up. Like, they throw every stone they possibly can. We are supporters of Lazar. We believe him.
100%.
I think it's too improbable he would know what he knew in 89 in terms of element 115. Yeah, okay. Eventually it would have been discovered.
Everything is coming true. The thing about the government made him a non-person.
Right.
He had a college degree, very nice one. I didn't pay any attention to it when I were at his house for him to process the film. And when George Knapp was doing investigation on is Bob real, George went to Albuquerque and he went to the Sandia Library. And there's two sides: a classified side and a public side. He got the phone book that of the time that Bob was there, and opened it up, and there was Bob Lazar's name with the phone number and the room number that he said he worked in, and the two people that worked in the same lab as him, they were in there with the same number and whatever. And then Bob had told George that I was written up in the Sandia newspaper, and it said, and I've seen the clipping. It said, Sandia professor relaxes on weekend by going 300 miles an hour in his jet car. And there's a picture of Bob standing in front of his Lamborghini jet car. And that was the Sandia newspaper saying Professor Bob Lazar, he relaxes on weekends on his jet car. Now, when I was at the Pentagon during Desert Shield and Desert Storm, I had Bob's W-2. And he's paid by the United States Navy. The Navy handles, it used to be the Army, and then it reverted to the Navy. They handle all of the classified deep black programs, stuff that will never see the light of day.
Did not know that. That's news
to me. Is that still to this day like that?
Yeah, that's what they do today. They are in charge of all the spooky programs.
Wow, interesting to know. Yeah.
So I had Bob's W-2. Now, at the time of Desert Storm, I was an E6. I was a tech sergeant, and I was they needed historians to write the history of the Air and Army Guard, the Air Force Air Guard, and the Army Guard of their involvement and contributions to Desert Shield and Desert Storm. So my job was to read every single message going to and from CENTCOM, from eyes only to, just restricted access. I mean, not classified, but confidential. So I had this one particular afternoon, I had a couple hours to kill. There was stuff that nothing was going on. There was conferences. There was other stuff going on. So I had some free time. So I got on the Pentagon computer, and I'm looking for the location of the Department of Navy that paid Bob Lazar, and I couldn't find it anywhere. And I couldn't find the zip code anywhere. So I decided I was going to go someplace that may know. I think it was Naval Investigative Services, but I'm not sure. But I go in there. I'm in my light blue short sleeved shirt with my ribbons and my dark blue pants. I guess it's a Class A uniform of sorts, but not your dress uniform. And I go to the room that this Navy Department of Navy is located. I go in there, and there's a young Lieutenant JG behind the counter, and I said, "Sir, can you tell me where this Department of Navy is located?" And I hand him, Lazar's W-2. And he looks at it and says, "Excuse me for a minute, Sergeant." He gets up, he goes into the 2-star's office. He comes back about 20 seconds later, and he said, "The Admiral will see you now." Now, those of you who are familiar with the Navy or just the military in general, no Navy 2-star admiral is going to talk to an Air Guard / Air Force enlisted puke unless it's really important. Mm-hmm. So I go in there and I give him a sharp salute. And he doesn't say at ease. He said parade rest. So I'm standing there, and he's almost trembling, and he's holding Bob's W-2 up. And he said, Sergeant, I don't know where you got this, but if I ever see your face cross the threshold of my office ever again, you'll be the most sorriest sumbitch and NCO in the United States military. Do you understand me, Sergeant? I said, yes, sir. He said, with that, he put Bob's W-2 in the shredder. He said, you're dismissed. I gave him a sharp salute, did an about face, and walked out. And I said, whoa, did I ever pull that guy's chain?
Yeah.
So if Bob was a fraud, if Bob wasn't who he said he was, why would this Navy admiral even want to talk to me? And why did he chew my butt out?
Yeah.
And so it just adds more credibility to Bob Lazar. And his story has never changed.
Yeah. And I was going to say this, it's like, obviously he doesn't believe in it. He gets into this program. But what he did when he came out, I don't think that they had prepared for that or even anticipated that this was a possibility, that somebody would go out and be public that much about S4 and Area 51. And legitimately, I know that whenever we defend Bob Lazar, because people are like, oh, well, his story doesn't pan out, whatever. And I'm like, I beg to differ. We all know of Area 51 and S4 because of Bob Lazar and George Knapp bringing it to the attention. How did Bob Lazar know about this installation? And the other proof as well is that he knew the exact location in the middle of a desert at 7:30 p.m. on a Wednesday night when people would see UFOs, and he brought tons of people out there to see it, even to the point at the end they had Winnebagos and whole parties, and they got almost arrogant about how cool it was to be there. That would have not happened. And all these people testified that, yes, we saw this. There's even footage of people recording it. So people dismissing his story is purely just because I don't want to believe it, or I don't trust the man, or like we have this expectations as human that you need to be infallible, like that you need to be, Jesus quality of human to come out and say, hey, I've seen something bad. Even recently, somebody said, oh, he was just a janitor at Area 51. I'm like, I would still listen to the janitor at Area 51.
Sure.
Right.
You still need a clearance to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even when he went public, he still did he still had a contract with the government to repair and adjust radiation sensors. Bob did work at Caltech, where you had to have at least a master's degree in physics to do what he was doing. Now they can't find his school records anywhere because he doesn't exist. His Social Security number, according to the United States government, was never issued.
Wow. To the lengths they'll go through, just to discredit you.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And his wife at the time, she died mysteriously. And I think that's what spooked Bob. And that's when he decided that there's something that's not right here. And I got to protect my butt.
Yeah.
But yeah, off to another area, but to confirm what Bob said, I had a friend named Dave Fruhoff. Dave was a retired lieutenant colonel, flew SR-71s. He lived in Lynchburg, Tennessee, about 11 miles from my dad. My dad lived in Tullahoma. He was head of one of the big wind tunnel complexes there at the Arnold Air Force Base. And I was visiting my dad, and I'd known Dave through my association with the Blackbird Association. So I called him up and said, "Hey, Dave," I said, "You tied up?" I said, No. I said, I'm down in Tullahoma. Can I come by and just interview you? He said, well, sure. So I went there, and I primarily went there to interview him on his loss, him having to bail out of an SR-71 that had a total electrical failure. And we got through all of that. And then I looked at him, I said, "Do you believe in UFOs?" And he said, "Absolutely, they positively do exist." Okay. I said, "Do you want to expand upon that?" And I figured he was going to say no. He said, "Sure." I said, "Well, shoot." He said, I was on a night mission on an SR-71 flying out of Kadena, Okinawa. It's 11 p.m. at night. I'm flying, I'm going straight and level. I'm at Mach 2.7 at about 78,000 feet. That's sort of a sweet spot for going to and from, because you don't thermally stress the systems.
Okay. What's the fastest it could go though, Jim?
The fastest an SR-71 has ever gone, Bill Weaver, was a 974, which is the best flying of all the SRs. He went Mach 3.43 after he finished the test guard. It was a 974 was assigned to Palmdale as Site 2 for flight test. To go to Mach 3.3, you need written permission from the wing commander. So guys will fly Mach 3.2. There's no reason to fly any faster. The airplane flies perfectly at 3.24. So Dave is at a night training mission. It's a 3/4 moon off the left side of the airplane. He gets a glint of something reflective. It has edges to it. He can't tell what it is. He can't tell how big it is, but he said it says 5 or 6 miles off to his right and 5,000 or 6,000 feet above him. So he gets hold of Kadena on secure voice and said, "Do we have another bird up?" He said, "No." Said, "You were at briefing today." He says, "You're the only one up there." I said, "Well, I have company. I'm going to go take a look." So he's in minimum afterburner at Mach 2.7. So he advances the throttles. He does about a 10-degree bank, and he starts climbing and turning towards this object. He didn't want to open his visor because he's getting reflections from the cockpit instruments, because he's trying to look out to see if he can see where he doesn't see stars. Because up at 85,000 feet, you got a bazillion stars up there.
Wow.
So he's getting closer and closer. He said when he was still 1,000 or so feet below it and still a mile or so away from it, this thing took off at about a 30-degree angle of attack and left him in the dust like he was heading the other direction. He figured it left him going between 8 and 12,000 miles an hour. So between Mach 12 and Mach 16. And he couldn't believe what he saw. The backseater saw it as well. I don't know. He didn't say what he did once he got to Kadena, because back in those days, you didn't report UFOs because that would destroy your credibility. My boss in the Air Guard, Air Force Chief of Staff, was Major General Wayne Gatlin. And I asked General Gatlin, and I guess it was 83, 84 timeframe. I said, let's assume for the fact that I'm a F-4 pilot and I'm out chasing something, and I realize that I'm chasing a UFO. What do I do? So I've gotten up close to it. I've seen it. I don't have a gun camera. We had RF4s at the time. I wasn't able to take a picture. I didn't have cameras installed with film. What do I do? He said, well, you come back and do your post-flight, go and take a shower, go to the club, pound down 2 or 3 really, really strong drinks, go to your billet and forget what you saw. Because if you report that you chased a UFO or you locked onto a UFO, that your career is just down the toilet. It's not going to happen.
Jim, I got a question on that vein, though. For yourself being part of this your entire life, a pilot is invested in. They spend millions of dollars training these guys and on how to observe, how to do their job, how to use the weaponry, for crying out loud.
Yep.
Yet somebody who's that trained, that professional, comes back and says, hey, wait a minute, guys, there's something up there. Oh, you must be a loony. Let's ground you.
Well, they won't necessarily ground him, but if he's a major, he's not going to make lieutenant colonel.
Yeah.
That's all.
You're not getting promoted.
Yeah, but why? Are they just trying to shut you up? Like that's their incentive?
The official reaction to UFOs is to ridicule the person.
Right.
They don't exist. It's their cover up. UFO has been going on for a long time. Now, where they're coming from, we don't know. But I was a docent up at Kitt Peak National Observatories outside of Tucson for a couple of years. And they have the largest assemblance of optical telescopes in the world. They have 22 of them up there, everything from a 12-inch to a 13-foot primary mirror on the 4-meter male. The 2.1 meter was used by Caltech in remote viewing and also doing adaptive optics. For 5 years, they used the 2.1 meter telescope at Kitt Peak looking for exoplanets. Those are planets outside of our atmosphere, outside of our solar system. And over the course of 5 years, they cataloged 8,000 exoplanets. And just before I left, they had gotten a new volunteer coordinator that talks down to people. And you talk down to me, that's going to last about 2 seconds, and then I'm out of here. But just before I left, we had they announced that they were having a beer and pizza at the NOAO headquarters, which is National Optical Astronomy Observatories, located at the University of Arizona in Tucson. So we're there, said all the astronomers, all the technicians, and all the docents were there for a gathering. They were going to hear about from the head of the National Science Foundation as it pertains to astronomy. And this gentleman got up and started talking. He said he had just returned from a worldwide conference on exoplanets. And he said, based on all the information gathered from all these different telescopes, using proven mathematical formulas for probability, we calculate for every star in the universe, there's 1.5 planets. Think about that number.
Yeah.
And out of that incredible number, there are 2 billion, that's with a B, 2 billion Earth-like planets orbiting a similar sized brown dwarf star as our sun in the inhabitable zone with liquid water. If we're the only ones, what a waste of space. And that's to quote Jodie Foster's character in Carl Sagan's movie Contact. We're not alone. We've never been alone.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the things I'm doing, it has nothing to do with UFOs or airplanes, but it has to do with possibly alien involvement. I'm in the process of, trying to raise money to do an excavation of the largest Mayan pyramid complex in Belize. And there's 3 pyramids, and there's a village or a city below it. It is the only location in the country of Belize that is not controlled by the federal government. The Belize is controlled by the village, because this village was isolated up until 2012 when they cut in a 6-mile road into this village. And just by pure luck or God's will, however you want to look at it, we sort of landed on this place, and everything, all the alignments of the stars were perfect for us to go in there. And we've received permission. We're working on the formal paperwork. We have exclusive rights and access on the excavation and restoration of this three pyramid complex. So we need to raise initially about $1.5 million. And we're going to employ most of the able-bodied men in the village, because it's a subsistence type of environment there. They grow everything they eat. None of them really have jobs. Some of them do construction work on the outside of the village. There's 700 people, men, women, children, and Alfredo, who is the mayor, he's a short guy, about 5 foot tall. He said, we have 172 healthy, able-bodied men that's ready to go to work today in taking off the overburden of the pyramids. So that's I went and spent 2 weeks down there. It was absolutely fascinating. On the first full day we're there, I think one of the reasons that we were given more or less the prompt to go to this location, and it's Ubenton Kai pyramid complex, because we were at one of the excavated sites in Belize, not that far from Punta Gorda, and it's about a 1.5-mile walk. And we were almost at the very end of it. It had rained. The sky had opened up and just dumped water on us, and everything was wet. And I'm about 20 feet from the end of being off the pyramid. And it's just, they just do the tops. They don't do the whole thing. We're going to do the whole thing. And I have a real bad sense of balance. I had a brain tumor and they severed my auditory nerve. So I have real shaky balance. And I'm an old guy. I'm 78. So I decided I wasn't going to go down the steps, which were uneven. They were built by the Mayans. They, and they had sharp edges. I figured, well, I'll just go on the side over here. And I take one step, and feet went out from underneath me. I went head first into this pile of rubble. And these are sharp edge rocks. And I had a gash and a puncture wound. And I get up, and of course, it's raining. A little bit of blood goes a long way. A lot of blood goes even farther. So it didn't hurt that much. I went down. They got a first aid kit. They cleaned it up, and we're driving out of the village. We got out of the complex. We're driving this little village of maybe 300 or 400 people, and there's a clinic there. Go in. There's a doctor. He's from Cuba. He escaped here a couple of years ago, and we started talking. And he was surprised how old I was. He said, I have some some patients that are in the early 70s, and they look 10, 20 years older than you look. And I said, well, I lead a clean life. So they sewed me up. I got 11 stitches. They said, don't go in the water, any water, other than a swimming pool or a shower. Because if you go in the rivers or the mangrove swamp water, you may turn into Swamp Thing. So we don't want that.
Full of parasites and stuff, right?
Oh God, yeah, just something terrible. So I figured, since I gave blood and DNA to the Mayan gods, they decided to guide us towards the village of Santa Cruz, in which they did. And
that was your sacrifice to the gods, right?
Right. And it turns out this according to stuff that we've read, that this complex is the largest and the oldest one in Belize. And it was occupied between 200 AD and about 800 AD. And so it's been vacant ever since. We talked to archaeologists that were at the sites that were given tour guide. They were tour guides, but they working under masters or PhD in Mayan archaeology. And there's speculation now. They're saying that it's very possible that the pyramids are not 2,000 years old. They're more like 20,000 to 200,000 years old. And the Mayans found them. They had been abandoned, and the Mayans repurposed them.
Wow.
So that just adds an awful lot. 200,000 years old, and they were able to build these things like Machu Picchu. Now, the level of sophistication is not at all like you have at Machu Picchu. This is probably could be even earlier, because there's a lot of paragonal construction, but not to the point that they have there at in some of the other famous sites. So, but we have a 305-acre site that is now ours to excavate, and we're going back in probably early October. Jared Murphy, who has a podcast, Not Aliens, and Jared's a friend of mine. We're both from Minnesota. And Jared headed this. This is Jared's project, and it was a perfect fit, personality-wise, and everything else was. But Jared decided on Memorial Day, well, I'm 50 years old. I think it's time for a massive heart attack.
Oh no!
And he did. He had what they called a widowmaker.
Oh no!
And if it wasn't for his best friend and his business partner, who was right there, gave him CPR, broke 4 ribs. He lost absolutely nothing as far as his brain function. And that's what everybody was concerned about, because Jared is he's very, very smart, and to lose a brain like that. But I knew things were going to be okay when he was. I think it was day 3 of his heart attack, and he was on a respirator for 8 days and unconscious for 5 of those days. But they're trying to see if he has any brain function. There's tests that you can do if the only thing alive is your brainstem, and that's the bottom of the foot. If you get a sharp object and go like that, the foot will curl, and his did. So, like I say, it hasn't been 72 hours yet, and he hasn't opened his eyes. He's still unconscious, heavily sedated, and the doctor says, "Jarrett, if you can hear me, wiggle your toes," and he did. And his girlfriend, Michaela, she about fell down with joy. And he said, "Can you, if you can hear me, squeeze my hand." And he did. And just right after they took out the breathing tube, he's still semi-unconscious. They were saying, well, he can't put his contacts back in, so we need to get reading glasses so he can read emails and whatever. And but they still don't know how well his brain is. He was able to wiggle his toes and squeeze the hand. And he said he had no voice. He said, "Get hold of my ophthalmologist in Sandy, Utah, where he was living. He just checked my eyes. He has the prescription. He can tell you what magnification you need for the readers." So right then and there, we knew he was all there.
Yeah, the whole time.
Yeah. And I talk to him almost every day now, and it's we're working towards. We have to come up with a lot of money up front. We're going to do a LiDAR scan. That's going to cost us about $20 grand. Mm-hmm. And the LiDAR is what they can do is unbelievable. Yeah. I saw what Tom Elmore did up at it's up in New England. They refer to it as the American Stonehenge. And you can see inside buildings. You can see the walls. You can see the plumbing. You can see what's below you in the dirt. And it'll stop on solid object, but it looks through trees. If there's trees there, they just disappear. So we're gonna do a scan of. There's 3 pyramids. We can't go to the 3rd pyramid right now because it's occupied, and it's occupied by a very, very large hive of Africanized honeybees, the killer bees. So no one wants to go anywhere near there, and they'll probably wait until right now we're in the middle of the monsoon season, and they were going to go there and because I think the bees move out when it gets really wet. So they're going to try to go in there and take down the hive. They're not going to kill it. They're not going to kill the bees or torch it or whatever, but they're going to gather all the honey and but get rid of the hive. I guess it's massive. It's been going on for
probably would be those are the largest bees on the planet. But before we don't want to waste too much more of your time, Jim. I want to ask you a couple quick questions though,
sure.
Just in relation to government tech versus non-human intelligence tech. And you were in a movie produced by our good friend Darcy Weir, Secret Space UFOs, The Rise of the TR-3B. For those of you who don't know, the TR-3B is essentially a black triangle that supposedly we have engineered. And I've always been fascinated by the stories of it. And you're an expert on this type of stuff. So what can you tell us about, government-made UFO tech?
If someone sees a UFO and has a red and green light on it, which is really required to fly in controlled airspace, it's man-made.
Yeah.
If it has rivets and seams on it, it's man-made. If there's only one, if we can only prove without a shadow of a doubt there's the one real alien craft, that's all we need.
That's right. Yeah.
But they've been, the governments of the world have been hiding this stuff forever. I mean, you look at some of your Renaissance paintings. They have discs up in the sky with beams coming down. The Romans talked about the flying shield that was spewing out fire or whatever. And to quote Jodie Foster's character, if we're the only ones, what a waste of space.
Yeah.
The TR-3, there's a TR-3A. It's built by Teledyne Ryan. It's a flying triangle. And it may have been, some of the prototypes of what they're doing to build the TR-3B. Now, I've known people who have been at work at Area 51s since they found the lake bed in 1954. I've asked all of them, you believe in UFOs? And all of them said, absolutely, they positively do exist. And, but I don't have anything I put my hands on. Just before he passed away, I was talking to Ben Rich. He was at USC Medical Center. He was dying of esophageal cancer, probably brought on by the solvents used in low observable coatings on F-117 and HAB Blue and other ones. And we were talking about our late friend John Andrews and a bunch of other stuff. And then just before the end of the conversation, he said, Jim, we have things out in the desert. And he wasn't referring to Area 51. He said, we have things out in the desert that's 50 years beyond what you can comprehend. Now, I can comprehend a hell of a lot. And he said, if you've seen movies like Star Trek or Star Wars, we've been there, done that, or decided it wasn't worth the effort. I said, Ben, you want to expand upon that? And he said, no, which is very typical Ben Rich. And then some bitch had the nerve to die on me 10 days later. So
he drops a bomb right before he leaves, right?
Yeah. So like to that point, do we have a space force? Is there a fleet of craft that have non-terrestrial officers, like people full-time? Is it like Star Wars? Do we have ships on patrol out there?
I have to believe yes. Do I have proof? No. Right. But my gut tells me. Now, we haven't been using all this alien technology for naught. I mean, Bob Lazar said if you wanted to go from one end of the universe to the other, if this was the universe, you're here, you want to go here, you focus over there, and as soon as you release the power, whatever it is, you're there. Mm-hmm. There's no time interval involved. Now, I don't know how it is when you come back from that location. Has the world moved on 60 years or 6,000 years or a million years? I don't know. But if you've seen movies like Star Trek or Star Wars, we've been there, done that, or decided it wasn't worth the effort. And I don't think he would have told me that just to yank my chain, as he knew he was going to he wasn't going to be around any longer.
Yeah.
Well, and I mentioned that a few times, Jim, that they're building Space Force, but to build Space Force, do you get do you recruit people first and then build the ships, or do you build the ships first and then recruit the people to operate the ships? It's kind of like, which came first, the chicken or the egg?
Well, I think it was parallel.
Oh, you think it was growth at the same time?
Yeah. You have the. Now, when I was doing my book signing at the Skunk Works with Jeff Babion, who was the vice president, general manager, #1 guy, we're heading over to the U-2 operation at Site 2 at Palmdale, Air Force Plant 42. And we're in the back of the limo, and I'm about 2 feet from his face. I looked him right in the eyes. I said, all right, Jeff, how much alien UFO technology is being utilized in Skunk Works programs? And he responded almost immediately. I don't know if he was ready for it. He didn't look shocked or jump back. He said, I have absolutely no knowledge of any alien technology that's being utilized in Skunk Works programs, but I don't know what was built in the past that I may not have a need to know about.
Yeah.
I said, my job is not to look back. My job is to look to the future. And said, personally, said Lockheed has a policy, you don't comment at all on UFOs, period. Mm. Personally, I feel we can't be alone. And that's basically his only comment. But I did ask the #1 skunk, do you believe in how much alien technology is being utilized?
Yeah.
And there are facilities, there's got to be facilities. I know Dugway is a place that has been ID'd as a place for underground, very, very large underground facility. And there's a new base 90 minutes from Twin Falls, Idaho. We're not sure where it's at. And I was told by multiple people that it is a new base. It's in the middle of nowhere. They decided they weren't going to put a restricted area around it, as far as airspace goes, because as soon as you put a restricted area box up, it's a big red flag. Hey,
Yes.
this restrictive area is brand new. They're doing something. Let's go out there and investigate.
Yeah.
And what I hope to do someday, and I don't know if I can pull it off, my friend Michael Schratt is a licensed pilot. He had a lot of hours on single, I think he has twin engine time too, to go to Twin Falls, go to the local FBO, rent a 172, and then go fly around the northeast corner of Nevada, see if we can find something. Because that's where supposedly everything, the new place is. And
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure Bob's coming out and made them have to move all their crap.
Yeah,
because it would bring so much attention to it. They're like, crap, now we got to move everything.
Well, there's many S locations. It's not just S4, right? Just like Area 51, there's an Area 52. Like they're not the one and only,
The way Area 51 got its name, and the only reason I know this because I was in the command post there at Nevada Test Site. I was being Bill Sweetman, my mind just went. Warren James, who was a rocket scientist, Stu Brown, who was senior editor at Pop Sci, and myself, we're on a tour of the Nevada Test Site, and we're at the Sedan crater. I mean, that big 1,300 foot wide, 400 feet deep hole that blew out so much radiation and dust, and I'm surprised it didn't kill everything downwind. But to track fallout when they were doing above ground nuclear tests, they built a grid from Area 1 through Area 200 and extends out into Utah and even parts of Colorado. So the area to the west of Area 51 is Area 50. The one to the east is Area 52. It just happens to be it. If it had been any other number, it wouldn't be Area 51. It'd be whatever the area was at the time.
There's 200 of these locations.
Yeah, and they put sensors up when they had above ground nuclear tests, which they stopped in 62.
Yeah.
So that's the grid. That's how the area got its name. Now on my Facebook page, I have a picture taken on December 25th, 2021 of Area 51. A guy flew around it. And he didn't have a real good camera. He had a Pentax P1000, and it's a fixed lens. It goes from 30 to 300 or to 3,000 millimeter. And I don't know what he was shooting. He needed someone to go up in his airplane with a Nikon 850 with a really, really huge lens to get something, because there's all sorts of new construction there. There's a building that's at least a mile away from any part of the flight line that you go into and go out of. So they're loading something really, really nasty in that hangar.
And big.
Yeah, and it's a big one. It's a big one. So,
and most of it's underground, if I understand correctly.
Well, now at Area 51, there's Dave Fruoff, when he retired as an SR-71 pilot after chasing a UFO, because of his clearance and because of the area that he worked in, he got a job. He ended up getting a job as facility manager at Area 51. He was responsible for every structure from the largest hangar to the paint locker. And he was responsible for all non-program maintenance on the aircraft. Plus he did photo chase. And I asked Dave in my conversation when we were talking about him chasing a UFO, he said, there are no underground facilities at Area 51 because I would have been responsible for those areas. But on the other side of the Papoose Range, we have the ability to dig, to cut through a 36-foot diameter hole through solid granite in about a foot an hour. And that's how they made the holes, going down to detonate the nuclear weapons underground detonations, and that's how they made Yucca Mountain. They have the ability to do that. So, but what you have is, if you've done excavation, you have to have a road in and a road out.
Yeah.
And unless there's an embedded nuclear power plant at the location, which is very possible, you'd have to have power lines coming into it somehow from some location. And all the scanning I've done, I haven't seen any, but I haven't. We've gotten really good at camouflage as well.
Yeah.
So just because we can't find it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
That's the whole point, right? Make
Yep.
it so it can't be found.
Yep. Or make it difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But I had I was at the disclosure project with Dr. Greer a couple of weeks ago in DC, and I talked to 5 of the 6 whistleblowers. And these guys, I mean, you can tell just by the quivering in their voice and the emotion that it brought up. These guys are real. These guys are telling the truth. And there's some stuff that happened. One guy lost his dad. His dad lost everything because he worked in the classified environment. He lost his clearance. He ended up losing his house. He lost everything. His dad quit talking to him, and that was his best friend in the whole wide world. And his dad came out with some weird cancer and ended up dying. And he should go after the federal government and run someone through the coals for doing what they did to him and his family. They made life absolutely miserable. And
yeah, regardless of your opinion of Greer, maybe some of the people he's representing are telling the truth. So don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, so to speak. So,
well, because of what he has done, he's now working with, and so is the Cousin brothers. They interviewed him. Is a congressman from Kentucky, I think Tim Burnett or Burchett, yeah, and he's the real deal. And on video, he said, "I have seen material that I know is not of this earth."
Wow.
Yeah.
And he's in charge of the new investigative committee, whatever it is, on UFOs. And more and more people are going back instead of UAPs. More and more people are even within the community are saying UFO/UAPs. So the UFO name is going to stick. They try to change it to take away some of the mystique or some of the negativity that goes around with, oh, you're a UFO guy. Now, I have been out at the fence line at Tonopah Test Range or Area 51 over 80 different times over the last 40 years. I've been out in the desert, just myself. All right, if there's a UFO, I want to see it. I've been at the black mailbox. This is the early 90s. There wasn't a cloud in the sky. It was just a sliver of the moon. As it went behind the mountains, I'm sitting there. I said, okay, if you can read my mind, abduct me. And I'm concentrating as hard as I can, but let me take my Nikon with me. And I don't.
On one condition, yeah.
And do what you have to do. Make sure I get home intact, because I do have a wife, and I think she'd be really upset if all of a sudden I left this universe, I left this solar system and went somewhere else to be experimented on. So, are UFOs real? Yeah, millions of people are reporting them. Millions of people have had experience with them. With John Lear, one of the things he did when he worked for ATA, American Transair, he went out and he actually tracked down people who had said they had been abducted. And he fly into that particular city. He would contact the local psychiatric community and said, I need the name of a certified hypnotist that specializes in deep dives. Let's see, I want to go into your deepest, darkest secrets. And he would pay for him. And I don't know if he would give the person, the person being interviewed or being hypnotized anything. He never said one way or the other. But he had 15 candidates. And over the course of about 5 years, he said 13 of the abductees had the exact same story. 2 of them were full of you know what.
Yeah.
You could tell just by their reactions, even under hypnotism, because they had gotten to a point they weren't really going under. I've been hypnotized a number of times for various things, and I guess the smarter you are, the easier it is to hypnotize you.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
It's the dumb slugs
because you
that are
believe it's
hard.
possible. It's the ones that don't think it's going to work. It doesn't work.
Yeah. Because of hypnotism, I lost 170 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's an amazing feat.
At one time, I was 375. This morning, I was 205. So,
wow.
Well, the fraud that I was married to was trying to kill me. I would probably consume 5,000 calories of garbage after dinner every night.
Wow.
And I gained all that weight the 10 years I was married to her, and she was hoping I would die.
Yeah. Kill you with food?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to be around for many years to come, Jim. We hope anyways.
Well, I'm 78. I have a real strong heart. I have great blood pressure. I don't have a problem with cholesterol. All the parts that are critical to my existence work perfectly. It's the parts that wear out. Like I have artificial knees. I've had carpal tunnel. I know I'm going to have shoulder surgery someday. Maybe not. Maybe I can make it to 100. And I know I'm going to live to be over 100. And my mom is 100% Sicilian, and 5 or 6 male members of her extended family lived to be 103 to 107.
Nice.
And these are all rough and tumble Sicilian fishermen, or hitmen, one of the two. Mom said there was 2 sides of the family: the Cardinales and the Brunos. The Brunos were fair-haired, blonde, redheads, green or blue eyes. They were the artisans. They were the stone masons and whatever. It said then we had the Cardinale side: the black hair, the dark skin, the dark eyes. They were the murderers, the loan sharks, the hitmen, and
straight up mafia.
Oh yeah, my father referred to it as the Mothers and Fathers Italian Association.
Yeah,
yeah.
That one. Jim, we'll have to do a part 2 because obviously your knowledge is extensive, and there's no way we can cover it all in an hour and a half. But we'll definitely do a part 2 if you're okay with it. We'll go ahead and
absolutely.
We'll
it was fun chatting with you. It's cool to get some of this perspectives, because you've talked to the big name people. A lot of them are passed away. There's no more testimony coming from them. But the trust you had, the relationships you had, they told you stuff that if Jason and I were to interview Ben Rich, he's not going to tell us anything, right? But because you've been so engrossed in it.
Ben and I talked about once a quarter for almost 25 years.
Yeah.
If I didn't call him, he called me. And last time I saw him face to face, he'd already retired, but he had an office across the street from the Skunk Works in Burbank. And he gave me a box of slides, and they weren't anything to go ooh about, but they were a program called Senior Prom. They were a baby F-117 looking cruise missile. And it's still classified today. But he said, as far as Lockheed's concerned, it's not. And he said, don't show these images to anybody until I've been dead for at least 5 years, because then it's harder to drag my butt out of the grave and wake me up and punish me. So, but I don't know how I got the relationship with Ben. It was because of my friendship with John Andrews. John would write letters to Ben all the time, and he had beautiful penmanship and a brilliant mind. And he's the one who asked Ben. He said, "Ben, do you and Kelly believe in UFOs?" And there was 2 categories, both man-made and extraterrestrial. And Ben came back, and it's been published multiple places, with his corporate letterhead, President of the Lockheed Skunk Works. Both Kelly and I are firm believers in both categories. We refer to ours as unfunded opportunities, underlines the U, the F, and the O. And it said, but beware, there are people out there that will lead you astray and could possibly do you harm.
Yeah.
So, do we have proof? Yeah, I think we do. Are aliens real? I have to say without a doubt, absolutely. We're not alone. But one of the glues that holds the world together is the glue of believing in a supreme being, whether it's Jesus Christ, whether it's Muhammad, whether it's Buddha, or Adam Smith, whatever. And if all of a sudden the world is being told that there's no such thing as heaven and hell, I mean, there is on Earth. I know that because I've been married 3 times.
You got the battle scars.
Oh, yeah, but the sweetheart I'm married to now, she's the one I was supposed to marry to begin with. She's just, I go on my road trips. I drive my Corvette everywhere I go. I tell her I'm going to go to Hawaii for 2 weeks. You want to come along? No, you go there, have a good time. I go to Hawaii. That's where I was before I retired. I lived in Waikiki at the Ilikai. I had the best room. I had the best apartment number of them all, 911.
Nice.
Yeah.
It comes in handy in an emergency, right?
Oh yeah. So we're not alone.
Yeah.
There's just too much out there. This thing with the guys at Kit Peak being told that, hey, there's 2 billion Earth-like planets. There's got to be occupied. A couple of them got to be occupied. We're only 4 billion years old, our solar system and our galaxy. The universe is 13.5, but based on images from the James Webb Space Telescope, they found a 4-star complex. And according to what they've been using forever, redshift, to determine the distance, how old they are, that these stars and galaxies were there 1 billion years before the supposed Big Bang.
Yeah.
How do we answer that?
I mean, as good a mathematician as you are, how does anybody go, yeah, we're 13.7 billion years old? Like, how accurate really is that number? I mean, we are mere mortal humans,
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me if it was 5 times older or half as old, because it's an educated guess, I believe.
No, they've been able to prove, through good science that you can measure the distance away from us by the redshift, and there's a certain. Now, one of the things that's going on at Kit Peak, and right now it's closed to the public. They had a fire going up the mountain, and it didn't do any damage at the Kit Peak, but it damaged a lot of there are no barriers, and it's 2,000 feet down if you run off the road. So they, until they get the barriers put up, it won't be open to the public. But there's just at the Mayo, this is the 4-meter telescope. And there's a twin telescope, built at the exact same time down in Chile, that they took off the secondary mirror. They put a optical head up there with 5,000 optical lenses that are all adjustable. And what they were, it was slowed down by the scandemic, but for 5 years, they were going to do a spectral analysis at each location. They figured they're going to do 40 million galaxies, so a total would be about 100 million galaxies. And they're trying to identify some way to measure dark energy and dark matter, because they say that 95% of the atomic weight of the universe is made up of dark matter.
Yeah. You
can't see it, you can't taste it, you can't smell it, you can't touch it, but it affects absolutely everything in the universe. Mm-hmm. They're trying to determine that. And stuff like that just tickles the hell out of me. And I'm waiting for the giant Magellan telescope to get first light. They make the mirrors at the Mirror Lab at the University of Arizona, and they have built 8 27-foot diameter mirrors. Now, one's a spare in case they drop one. I can't imagine.
It's expensive.
But it's at the telescope is at 16,000 feet. It's in Chile. It's 200 miles from the closest town. It's some of the driest air on the planet. It hasn't rained in 200 years. And yeah, I think you have to work oxygen if you're up there, but it's operated remotely, at a lower level. They figure they'll be able to look back within 100,000 years of the first light in the universe. But what they may see is they may see past what they think is first light, and it may go back a couple more billion years. They don't know that. And every big telescope that they put up, whether it was the Hubble, whether it was the James Webb, whether it's going to be the Giant Magellan Telescope, or even Galileo's telescope, every time you make that jump in technology, all of a sudden you realize, well, I don't know squat. Everything I thought I knew, it's not real anymore. It doesn't happen. So it's going to be exciting. So I have my fingers in a lot of things, and people say, well, you're retired. Why don't you slow down? I said, if I stop moving, I'll die.
Yeah.
I have to keep this thing working all the time. I have to challenge my brain. I have to use my brain, and I enjoy it. It keeps me refreshed. I guess that's probably the best way to put it. And I'm a news hog. I mean, I read everything about everything around the world, but I don't listen to anything of the mainstream media here. Everything I read is your European or foreign press, but English language foreign press. And I have friends all over the place, and I get stuff, and it's just what I do, and I enjoy it, and I'm having a time of my life. And it's
an inspiration for guys our age too, young guys, to be able to sit and chat with somebody like you, friends with Bob Lazar for 35 years. Tell him to come on our show, would you?
Yeah.
I asked him, because I wanted him on, either with SOR or when I'm with Jared Murphy or with Ron Mason on Wednesday nights. He said, right now, I can't do anything like that, but that's just right now. That will change. So I'm one of the very few people who have never backed down on my belief in Bob Lazar, and he knows it.
Yeah.
It's even in writing when, I can't remember his name. He did a book called Dreamland Chronicles, and our chapter is called the Elders, and the chapter's on John Andrews and Jim Goodall. And I say, look, I'm a real skeptic about a lot of things, but everything my gut tells me and everything I see from Bob Lazar, he's real. And I believe, and his story has never changed. Even when it was beneficial for him to say, yeah, I saw grays. He never did. He never saw the alien. He saw references to them, but never saw any bodies or any, they call them the kids. The other thing is S4 real. There was a Mormon historian that was looking for the lost Mormon tribe and following their path through the Nevada desert. And they were stopped at the coming from Salt Lake. They were stopped at the border of Area 51 and Nevada test site, and the government would let them through. So he went around the other side of the Mercury site, and he snuck in. He walked in, and he was underneath an overhang, and he was aware of helicopters and stuff, but since it's not Area 51, there isn't any active sensors out there. It said in the middle of the night, he got up to go to the bathroom, and he's looking across Frenchman Flats and Yucca Flats over towards the southwest corner of the Papoose Range, and all of a sudden it was like someone was opening up a garage door. He saw the lights opening up. I mean, the light get really bright. Couldn't tell what was happening. It was too far away. I don't think he had a good pair of binoculars. And then it closed. Next morning, he got up and he had, he did have some way. I don't know if it's not a telescope, but a set of okay binoculars. And he went and looked at it, and there was nothing. It was nothing but the base of the mountain. Another thing, I have a friend of mine who had spent 5 years at Area 51 in the F-117 program, and he had a down day. This is after Ridenour crashed because they had switched the pitch and yaw outputs on the flight computer. And they had a Humvee, and there was a couple of guys, they were driving around. They were looking for artifacts from mining, old bottles and stuff. So they're actually on Papoose Lake and just looking for stuff. And out of nowhere came a half a dozen guys in black utilities armed. What are you doing here? Let me see some ID. You have no reason to be over here. Get out. They don't know where they're coming. There was no vehicles. They just appeared.
Mm.
And that's exactly where Bob said S4 was located. So
yeah, no, hands down, we've always been strong supporters of Bob, his story. And if ever he ends up listening to this or just hears word of mouth, like, we definitely will treat him like gold and royalty to come on, because we're just, as far as we're concerned, he's like one of the original whistleblowers. He came out, everybody dismissed him for 30 odd what years, and now there's starting to be other people coming forward saying, actually, no, he's dead on, because we're still working on those programs. It's amazing. And the fact that you got to know him in 88, right before he came out in 89, right before he
as a non-believer
he started the job. That's crazy.
He's sort of the Rosetta Stone of UFO, in the UFO community.
Yeah.
And he said, it didn't benefit him at all to go public. He told me.
Not at all.
No,
he
ruined
said
his life.
The worst thing he ever did in his life was go public. He said, but that killed his opportunity to take this to fruition. And that's his only regret. But he felt he had to come out. He had to tell the world what he was doing.
And good on him, because that shows his strength, his manhood, and only that the people deserve to know, right? Keeping people in the dark. I don't know about you, Jim, but sometimes some companies put out a thing, they're looking for help. Instead of getting experts to help them, to get the general population to help them. And the solution that the general population comes up with is beyond what anybody on that staff of that business could come up with.
Yeah.
And if this information, this technology is shared, and everybody in the world can apply their logic and reason to it, we'll solve this a lot faster than we are right now, right?
Yeah.
And it's a group effort. And, even people like yourself that, you've been around military installations your entire life, for people like yourself to come forward and say, you know what? Yeah, during my career, this and this and this happened. I know this guy. I know this is true. It gives credibility, and it builds the story of everything that's taken place so far to where we are now. And it validates that, yes, there is a situation. Yes, the things that we all think is conspiracy theory is actually reality. And this is important. This is why this podcast is important, because it gives a platform for people like yourself, sir, to come on and share with 150 plus thousand people a month what it is that your knowledge on this. So we really appreciate it. Guys, I'm gonna have to wrap it up. I have some shopping I have to do with the missus and the family today. But Jim, let's have you on again for part 2. You are welcome here on this podcast at any time, my man. You want to come in, promote a new book that you're doing or anything like that, just hit us up, okay?
Well, if any of you are interested in any of my books, go into Amazon and just punch in books by James C. Goodall, and my hardbound ones will come right up. And you can also go in and search by Jim Goodall. I did a lot of squadron signal stuff with Jim Goodall. But buy my books. If I have a book signing thing anywhere and you have a bunch of my books that you either bought at a flea market or you bought 25, 30 years ago, bring them. I'll autograph them for you. Now, one of the things that I'm going to do, hopefully later on this summer, is Northrop Grumman had no idea that I had a really good B2 book. And I was with Michael Schratt and Joel Christopher Payne. We were in LA. This is February. Elon Musk invited me for a tour of SpaceX. And the tours are in the evening. So during the day, I'm with Michael Schratt and Joel. And I went and bought my new Revell quarter-inch SR-71 kit. I don't know if I'll ever build it, but it's underneath the bed. I'll get to it someday. But we went to the Northrop Grumman campus in Manhattan Beach, which is an open campus, because Michael wanted to go to the gift shop. So we're in there, and I had with me in my bag the binding was broken. It was damaged a little bit on shipment. You can't give it away. You can't sell it. So I'm talking to the gift store manager, and he said, "You don't have anything on the B2?" He said, "We could really use one." I said, "How about something like this?" And she looked at going through, and she about wet her pants. She says, "I got to tell my boss." So she sent it off to her boss. she called me up, said, this is great. I sent it off to my boss, and Lou is in charge of everything, and they're going to order a whole bunch of them, and they want me to come to Plant 4 at Air Force Plant 42 is where they built the B-2 and the B-21. He said, I have to be escorted in. I said, I won't be able to see the B-21, but I'll be within 150 feet of it. And they're going to have the books there. I'm going to do an autograph party, and everybody that has any books of mine, bring them, and I'll sign them too.
Awesome.
Everybody support Jim Goodall. Go check out his pages. Jim, thanks again for being on the show. We really appreciate it. As Jason said, you're welcome back anytime. And best of luck with everything in the future. We'll chat with you again soon.
And you want to do part 2, just tell me when, and I'll be more than happy to join you. Good. It was a fun time. And how long were we on? Ooh.
Just shy of 2 hours. So we broke our hour-long nugget rule, but that's okay. Good content is good content. So
all right. You guys
appreciate you, Jim. Thank you, sir.
You have a great week coming up, and I had a great time, and I'm looking forward to coming back.
Awesome. Take care, Jim.
All right. Adios. Take care.